Our friend Tom has joined us. We'll find out in a little bit, but I think from Scotland. When we talk to him, we'll find out. Today's sutta is on the Phena Sutta, something I probably teach maybe 2 or 3 times a year, often on retreat, because it describes in a slightly unique way another key theme of the Dhamma, and that's the personal experience of suffering, known as the 5 Clinging Aggregates. It's similar to the Anatta Sutta from 4 classes ago. I think it was 4 classes ago. And it describes what we make out of a 6th-property person that we learned from the Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta, the 4 elements: earth, wind, fire, and water. The 5th property, the space property. The elements need something to manifest within, and the 6th property of the consciousness property, which is simply ongoing thinking rooted in ignorance of 4 noble truths. And that 6th property is the discerning and manifesting agent of the other 5 properties. In other words, it's that thinking that perceives what the human being comes in contact with and what they do with it. And so this sutta, follows the last 2 talks on dependent origination and how dependent origination relates to conditioning our minds, and the notion that the non-dual notion that the Buddha teaches is a myth. Everything should be seen in its discreteness. And that directly applies to the 5 clinging aggregates, because the problem with the 5 clinging aggregates is we cling them together, we make them one thing, non-dual, and we say that that's us. Of course, understanding that means seeing each of these aggregates in their discrete form, meaning not clinging together. Another interesting aspect of the sutta is the strong use of metaphor, as opposed to the Anatta Sutta, teaching the same subject, but that in a very direct way. But the metaphor here is, it's a very powerful metaphor, and it's also interesting when you think about the Buddha never wasted a word, even in using metaphor. And the metaphors he uses, the metaphor could be anything, but the metaphor that he actually uses does relate directly to the Buddha's Dhamma. The Phena Sutta. The Buddha was staying with the Avojins on the banks of the Ganges. He addressed those assembled. Friends, suppose a large glob of foam was floating down the river, and a person with good eyesight, that wouldn't be me, saw it and clearly examined it. To them, it would appear empty, void, without any substance. So that opening line, teaches a most basic aspect of the Buddha's Dhamma, and it's the most basic aspect that is often lost by those grasping after non-dual religions, lineages, spiritual philosophies, etc., etc. The way a human being views itself is of its own making, influenced by the environment that it lives in. To them, that form would appear empty, void, without any substance. That the Buddha is referring to someone who is established in right view. Now, the Buddha isn't talking about the magical and mythical and mystical realm of emptiness or nothingness that is so enamored by many in the world. And again, not just Buddhism. We learned about this last week, and the compulsion to establish some type of non-dual establishment is rooted in all religions. I'm not putting down religions, but it's something the Buddha looked at, understood completely, and abandoned that notion. And he used the notion of the 5 clinging aggregates as a description of what occurs to a human being who believes in any magical or mystical establishment of the self. It's simply an aspect of these 5 clinging aggregates that are rooted in wrong view. Let go of them. It's empty. The view of self, rooted in ignorance, is like foam on the water, empty of any substance. But that doesn't infer, imply, or state that human existence is empty. In fact, the Buddha is saying just the opposite. He's saying the human existence is full. In fact, That was what's inferred in the Dhatu Sutta. It's what was taught directly in the Anatta Sutta, and it's taught through metaphor here. Empty, void, without substance. For what substance could there be in a glob of foam? In the same way, any practitioner well versed in the Dhamma observes and appropriately examines any form that is past, future, or present, any form that is internal or external, obvious or subtle, common or extraordinary, near or far. The Buddha is referring to any actual or speculative fabricated establishment of self. And he covered every way that we do that. To those well versed in the Dhamma, it would appear empty, void, without any substance. For what substance could there be in any form that is constantly changing? That's an important point. Again, remember the Anatta Sutta. If it's impermanent, how could it be a self? Of course, it can't be a self, can it? That's the basic understanding of true vipassana, the three marks of existence, the impermanence of all things, most importantly, impermanence of the views of self that I've used to establish myself, that results in the third mark of ongoing stress and suffering, known as dukkha. How could there be any self in any form that is constantly changing? Think about that. If I'm using this form to say this is me, and I'm unaware that this form is constantly changing, in fact, it's changed in substantial ways, significant ways, from 2 minutes ago to now, from 2 seconds ago to now. We know even in a practical way that millions of cells are born into the human body in each moment, and millions of cells are sloughed off each moment. That's a part of, I'm not going to use the scientific term because I can't remember right now, Josh will remember it, but that's how human life is sustained, within that impermanence of cells arising and passing away in each and every moment. We don't have to be aware of it to know that it occurs. Science shows that it occurs. But what we do need to be aware of is the establishment of that arising and passing away in each and every thought and each and every breath and each and every feeling. All things arise and pass away independently of all other things, except the dependence of the physical structure for that to appear in. But that relates directly to the Dhatu Sutta too. The external establishment of the world is exactly the same as that internal establishment of the sixth property person. The Buddha continues. Now, suppose that in the rainy season, it is raining fat, heavy drops, and a water bubble appears and disappears on the water. A person with good eyesight sees this, and clearly examines it. The water bubble would appear empty, void, and without substance. For what substance could there be in a water bubble? What substance could there be in the fabricated view of self in relation to the world? In the same way, any practitioner well versed in the Dhamma observes and appropriately examines any feeling that is past, future, or present, any feeling that is internal or external, obvious or subtle, common or extraordinary, near or far. Most human beings, including us folks, spend their whole lives distracted by their feelings and massaging those feelings and manipulating those feelings so that in the next moment, my feeling will be what I want that feeling to be. We spend our whole lives doing that. We spend our whole lives trying to create structures to preserve a place for feelings. Who was it? Was it, I can't remember the comedian that used to. He used to say a house is just a place to keep all our stuff. And that's what we do. And we drag our stuff around with us all the time because we identify with it. So my brand new Maserati, I had to drag it around in here and it's in the back of my mind. I hope nobody's going to scratch it out there. I hope I took up 2 good parking spots on nobody's door. That kind of thinking is what distracts us because of clinging to things that have nothing to do with us, even though they might be a part of our lives. We live our lives present with what's occurring right here and right now. Our possessions are of no consequence in that moment. We don't need to always be mindful of what and who we are that we use to define ourselves, because all of it is like foam on the ocean when we're using it to describe ourselves. It doesn't mean that the objects that are now described metaphorically as like foam on the ocean aren't real. But creating an identity over them is empty of any real existence. That's what the Buddha is saying. And it leads back in a very subtle way to a question that is common in our sangha. And it came up a few times last week. Isn't this annihilation? What happens to the self? Well, nothing happens to the self. Nothing can happen to the self. The only thing that can happen to a six-propertied self is that it can be born and it can die. That's a human being. We can't do anything about that process. We can commit suicide, but that's not really a good idea. I don't mean to be flippant about it, but that's not Dhamma practice, is it? The Buddha teaches us how to live right here, right now, in this present moment, free of any fabricated views of self that would alter this moment in any way. We simply see things clearly. And as a result of understanding that, as a result of establishing right view in our lives, no matter what's occurring, our minds remain calm and at peace. To those well-versed in the Dhamma, all of those fabrications, the Buddha's words now, all of that would appear empty, void, and without substance, for what substance could there be in feelings that are constantly changing? And this directly relates to our meditation practice and how the Buddha taught only jhana meditation, how he taught it, and how that simple act of establishing seclusion, sitting down on our cushions, closing our eyes, closing our mouths, and taking a breath. I've just established my presence within the six-property person in a way that is useful, because that mind and that body is now united right here and right now. And it can now observe what's occurring within it. That mind and body is united within the body and can observe what's occurring mindfully, well concentrated, and without being distracted by feelings and thoughts. And how did we learn that? We learned it through the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So what I'm describing right now is how jhana meditation, while it's one factor of the Eightfold Path, one of those 8, it's also the direct experience of the culmination of the path, excuse me. And so what I mean by that, and it reflects on the brilliance of the Buddha. It took me years to really understand how significant jhana meditation was. When you think about what we're doing, I just said it, we are creating within ourselves the experience of what it's like to have that quality of mind known as an awakened human mind. It's that 4th foundation of mindfulness that we've talked about that we all experience, even if we don't notice it. We all experience it in every meditation session, even if it's only for a brief moment. But that feeling that we've all experienced, and we've all talked about it, everybody here has acknowledged it, of having that experience of calm, free of any directed thought or in the moment judging the experience, meaning evaluation. And that pure experience of calm understanding is an awakened mind. And for most of us, the first time we experience it is just a hint of what it means to be awakened. But again, we talk about this all the time. It's important to acknowledge it, because then we know through our own direct experience that the Dhamma is awakening. That's how we become, as the Buddha described, rightly self-awakened. We notice the emptiness of these feelings and thoughts by simply acknowledging them as they arise and pass away and coming back to the sensation of breathing during meditation. And now we've trained ourselves, so off our cushion, when I find myself losing my mind again because of a feeling that's welling up in me, a conditioned feeling, now judged by a thought attached to the feeling, I've now lost my mind, but I know the direct path back. I don't have to engage in any ritual. I don't have to pray and hope for something in the future. I don't have to die and get my reward. All that I need to do within the framework of the Eightfold Path is take a breath and unite my mind and my body. And in that moment, I'm experiencing what the Buddha is describing here. Those feelings and those thoughts are like a glob of foam. They're empty. They're without substance. For what feeling, for what substance could there be in feelings that are constantly changing? Now, the Buddha continues, suppose during the hot season, a mirage was shimmering. A person with good eyesight sees it and clearly examines it. The mirage would appear empty, void, and without substance. For what substance could there be in a mirage that is constantly changing? That's the same mirage that I would believe in, the mirage of that next piece of chocolate cake, that if I can just get it into my body, then I'll be happy. And it's the same mirage that if I can just keep these chants up for the next 30 years, I can get to Buddhist heaven. Or if I can say this prayer correctly, or if I can do this or do that, or if I hold the belief, if I have the faith in something, in a savior, then I'm good to go. Those are all a mirage. They're all empty. This is the constant theme of the Buddha's Dhamma. And we're kind of, just to use the phrase, we're hitting it hard these last few weeks with these talks on dependent origination, conditioned mind, and the non-dual myth. And we're hitting it hard because that's the essence of the Buddha's Dhamma. There's nothing to be imagined about human life as far as it relates to the Dhamma. I got to be careful about that. It doesn't mean that we don't think about our human existence and think about the stars and think about the implications of the vastness of the universe and the vastness of this and the experience of that and how a tree grows from a seed. Those are all interesting things. They have nothing to do with the Dhamma. That's why you hear me talk about there's 4 noble truths, and then there's a simple truth of human reality. So there's a truth that a tree grows from an acorn. An oak tree grows from an acorn. And that's good to know for someone who might be a botanist. But it's of no value to me as a Dhamma practitioner. I don't need to consider it. I don't need to hold it in mind because it's not a noble truth. It doesn't relate to the Dhamma. That's the difference. And that's the practical difference between 4 noble truths and the simple everyday truth of ordinary reality arising and passing away. We're not to be distracted by that reality. We're supposed to perceive and view that reality from understanding 4 noble truths. Everything else is empty, void, like foam on the water. That again, and this is this is where I'm making that point. It doesn't mean that human life is empty. It means that if we attach a view to that experience, that is empty. Our views of ourselves in relation to the world, if they're rooted in ignorance, are empty of any reality. How do we establish reality? Well, it is established. It's established as 4 noble truths understood through an 8-fold path. The Buddha continues in the same way, following from that, in the same way, any practitioner well-versed in the Dhamma, meaning the 8-fold path, observes and appropriately examines any perception that is past, future, or present, any perception that is internal or external, obvious or subtle, common or extraordinary, near or far. To those well-versed in the Dhamma, it would appear empty, void, without substance. Form, feeling, perceptions, mental fabrications, and ongoing consciousness, the 5 clinging aggregates. And I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Trying to find it where I am. Let me just say that. Now, suppose that a person with good eyesight is seeking heartwood. When the Buddha is referring to heartwood, he's always referring to the 8-fold path. And seeking heartwood, they went to a forest with a sharp axe. There they find a large banana tree. Banana tree is softwooded. There's nothing strong within it to build with. They cut it at the root and remove the top. They peel away the outer skin and fail to find even sapwood. To say nothing of finding heartwood. There's no value in that tree. Having good eyesight, they clearly examine the banana tree, and that tree would appear empty, void, without substance. And regard to heartwood, for what substance could there be in a banana tree? Again, there's no usefulness in the tree. In the same way, any practitioner well-versed in the Dhamma observes and appropriately examines any fabrications that are past, future, present, any feeling that is internal or external, obvious or subtle, common or extraordinary, near or far. To those well-versed in the Dhamma, fabrications would appear empty, void, and without substance. For what substance could there be in fabrications that are constantly changing? Now, suppose a magician were to display a magic trick, and a person with good eyesight clearly sees the trick. The trick would appear empty, void, without substance. For what substance could there be in a magic trick? Awakening is realizing the magic trick that we've been playing on ourselves our entire life. In the same way, any practitioner well-versed in the Dhamma observes and appropriately examines any consciousness that is past, future, or present, any consciousness that is internal or external, obvious or subtle, common or extraordinary, near or far. To those well-versed in the Dhamma, any consciousness. meaning ongoing thinking rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths, would appear empty, void, and without substance, any consciousness. So that thinking that we are so enamored with, and that we create very powerful and subtle strategies to maintain, mostly rooted in magic and myth, is empty. It's like foam on the ocean, on the water. Why not let go of it? And why do we have such a difficult time letting go of things that are like foam on the ocean, that have no substance at all, save for the substance that I insist it has? Because I thought of it. Because it's me. Because I live, I exist, and I own all those things that I use to describe myself as me. When the Buddha talks, and I talk about the spaciousness of awakening, it's just that. We're no longer clinging to anything to define me. Which means, what am I now? I'm simply a six-property person living a human life, free of the entanglements of wrong view. Continue. For what substance could there be in consciousness that is impermanent and rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths? Seeing these five aggregates clearly, the well-instructed follower of the Dhamma grows disenchanted with form. They grow disenchanted with feeling, disenchanted with perception, disenchanted with fabrications, and disenchanted with thinking rooted in ignorance, disenchanted with the present state of consciousness. Disenchanted means, and it's the perfect word, it means I'm no longer enchanted or mesmerized or hypnotized by my own views, by the belief in this form, by the belief in my feelings, by the belief in my perceptions and my fabrications, by the belief that my consciousness, even though it's rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths, somehow can describe reality to me. It obviously can't, at least in relation to the Four Noble Truths, until I developed an Eightfold Path. The heart within the Dhamma. They grow. This is, now the Buddha is describing how a person who is clinging to five clinging aggregates ends that clinging process. They grow disenchanted with the five clinging aggregates. Disenchanted. They grow dispassionate. Through dispassion, they remember this from the Natalakana Sutta. Through dispassion, they are released. Released from what? What are we talking about? All views ignorant of Four Noble Truths. With that release, the knowledge that they are released from clinging to those ignorant views arises. We know it. We have a direct experience of it. That's one of the main reasons why we go around the room in every class and talk about our experience. Because what we're talking about is acknowledging the experience of awakening. We're using the sangha in an appropriate way to reinforce the Dhamma within us. That's why the Buddha told Ananda that the sangha is the most important aspect of the Dhamma. And we talk about it all the time. And we experience it all the time, don't we? We get each other's support from talking about how we're developing the Dhamma. They know that birth is ended. What are we talking about here? It doesn't mean that we've awakened and we die, even though the third largest Buddhist tradition believes that once you awaken, poof, you vanish. They lose sight of the fact that the Buddha awakened, poof, he awakened, and he lived 45 more years teaching his Dhamma. They know that birth is ended. What are we talking about? I know now, once I've abandoned all views rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths, there's nothing left within me to provoke or give birth to another moment rooted in ignorance. That's what the Buddha is talking about. That's the most important aspect of karma and rebirth. The next class is on karma and rebirth, by the way. There are 2 classes. What am I giving birth to in this moment? It points directly to the immediacy of the Dhamma. What I hold in mind right now will determine what I'm giving birth to, meaning giving energy towards my experience. And if what I'm holding in mind is framed by right mindfulness, what I'm experiencing in this moment will not contribute to distraction, stress, or suffering. It will not contribute to greed, aversion, and deluded thinking. It can only contribute to another moment rooted in calm and peace of understanding. They know that birth is ended, the fully integrated. Usually the translation is the holy life has been lived. I always change that to the integrated life because we're not talking about religion. And the word holy has a religious connotation when really it means, holy means wholly integrated in whatever we're talking about. In the religious connotation, it's I'm wholly integrated in whatever that religion is. In the Dhamma, it means that we have integrated the Eightfold Path. The fully integrated life has been lived, and the path is now complete. They know there will be no more moments rooted in ignorance. Form is like a glob of foam, feeling a bubble. Perception is a mirage. Fabrications are like a banana tree. There's no substance in these fabrications. And consciousness is a magician's trick. The way that I think is like a magician's trick until I understand the way that I think. When you observe them and appropriately examine them, it is clear they are empty, void, and without substance. To anyone who sees them clearly, they are empty of ignorance. To anyone who sees the five clinging aggregates as they truly are, they are now empty of ignorance. It's similar to I can't think of the name of it. It's linked in every email, the Phena Sutta, awakening in a single paragraph. That whole sutta says that when one understands the five clinging aggregates as they really are, that one is now awakened. Beginning with the body, when the Buddha continues, beginning with the body, when seen with profound discernment, as taught by the Buddha, form is rejected, it's cast aside. When bereft of wrong views, the emptiness of form is seen clearly like a magic trick. An idiot's babbling. No substance is found here. A well-informed Dhamma practitioner, their persistence aroused, should continually view the aggregates mindful and alert. It would simply mean that's the appropriate application of refined mindfulness. We should apply that refined mindfulness developed through a life well integrated, the Eightfold Path, a mind well concentrated to these five aggregates. That's Dhamma practice. Where are these five aggregates arising and passing away in this moment? Notice the impermanence of each one of these. If it happens to be my physical form that I'm clinging to right now in a permanent state, recognize it. If it's a feeling that's describing who I am right now, I don't feel good about this, or I feel great about that. Understand it, let it go. It's like foam on the ocean. If my perception of what's occurring right here and right now is distracting me and causing stress, recognize where it comes from. It's rooted in the wrong view. It's like foam on the ocean. Recognize it directly and abandon it. Fabrication is the same way. And ultimately, we get to the understanding from a well-concentrated mind, it's my thinking that is, let me use the word, it's my thinking that has screwed me up all this time. It's my thinking. And that is the most powerful thought anybody can have and really understand it. Because if I truly understand it's my thinking that is a cause of all stress and disappointment in my life, and I also understand that I now have a Dhamma that teaches me how to reclaim my mind in a very direct way, it should be that should be the greatest moment in my life. And when I finally understood it, it was. Because now I know that the one elusive thing that I wasn't able to do in this life is now achievable by me, through my own efforts. That doesn't mean I'm going to do it in the next moment, but it means that someone who has taken true refuge in the Buddha, his Dhamma, and a well-focused sangha knows that they can do this. The Buddha continues. They should discard greed, aversion, and deluded thinking and make themselves their own refuge. What did I just say? What did I just say, folks? We're our own refuge. The Buddha says that to many different times, including in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, his last sutta, where the culmination of his entire 45-year teaching career is now being presented to Ananda. The Buddha knows he's dying. And he said, I'm not like a teacher with a closed fist. I've not held anything back, meaning there's nothing magical, mystical, or hidden in the Buddha's Dhamma. I held nothing back. I've taught with an open fist. Be your own refuge. Strive diligently for your own awakening. Strive diligently. Those are words that you very rarely hear in other applications, except something that there's something to do, isn't it? We have to strive diligently. How do we do that? How do we know we're striving diligently? We understand the right effort, which simply says in a very gentle way, keep going with your Dhamma practice, because we all know what that is. There is no mystery to anybody who's spent, I would say, 2 or 3 classes with me, one on the website, or maybe even read the suttas. They're a little bit difficult to get through. There's no confusion about what Dhamma practice is. Engaging in right effort is a very simple thing, save for a mind that's rooted in ignorance, creates very powerful and very subtle strategies to ignore its own ignorance, including creating a belief that I must spend my life establishing myself in some magical, fabricated, mystical way. hear me say this over and over again. I've had people leave the sangha because I say it over and over again. But I say it over and over again because it is the Dhamma. And if we're not willing to go there, we're not willing to engage in right effort. Because ultimately, the Dhamma charges us with recognizing and abandoning all views rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths. That's the reconciliation that is developed within the Dhamma. Let me finish this. They are their own refuge, and they take to the Dhamma as if their hair was on fire. That's what happened to me. I didn't get to it quick enough. In hopes of gaining Nibbana. That's the end of the sutta. Thank you all for listening. This is one of my favorite suttas. Part of it is the metaphor. I know some people really don't like metaphor either, and I understand it. But the Buddha's use of metaphor is, even after all these years, is so brilliant and I think relevant, and it really gets to the point. And you think about this whole sutta of metaphors comes down to just that one metaphor. My fabricated views, my views rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths, are like foam on the ocean. Why not just let them go? And that's the meaning of the word anatta, the true meaning of anatta. The views we're holding of the self are wrong views of self. Let go of the views. Don't create other views to establish the self. Thank you. We will, let's start with, who is that right there? Mary, how are you? I think that's Mary. Yeah. Mary, how are you this morning? Mary. Mary, are you there? Oh, maybe she stepped out for a minute. Kevin, how are you this morning?
Very good, John. I hope you can hear me.
I can. I hear you.
Yeah, good. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, thank you for the sutta, John. We've been over this several times, and when I first heard it, I thought it was great. It was a metaphor. It was very quaint, and I thought, well, I'm not exactly sure about this banana tree. What does that mean? I better memorize this. I better learn it better because I'm not learning it right. But as we go over it again and again, and in view of all the classes we've had recently, especially, I realized that it's so intense. It's really, it's about emptiness. What Buddha really meant for emptiness and for the not self and for enlightenment. So it is very intense, and it really, it helps us to find that release during our meditation, and it gets easier and easier to see. So thank you for bringing us there.
Thank you, Kevin, for describing that too. It's such a key sutta.
Yes.
And your understanding of it, like that you described when you first heard it, you were describing kind of almost a panicky kind of mind. Let me grasp after it. But you continue to engage in right effort, and now it's perfectly obvious what it's meant by it, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
That's Dhamma practice, And there's nothing, even with a terminology, some of the words we haven't heard of before, but even those aren't hard to really understand and fit into the puzzle with just continued practice. But most people do that in the beginning. We get confused because we don't quite understand it. That also shows a lot of inner skillful desire to develop the Dhamma too. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. Tom,
it's good to see you. I said I was going to ask, where are you? Are you in Scotland?
No, I'm in London.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's good to see you. How are you this morning?
Yeah, very good. Very good. It's early afternoon here. I've been missing the Tuesday evening sessions because now I'm in a different time zone. It's just obviously that session would be in the middle of the night when I was in the Philippines. Sorry, when I was in the Philippines it worked, but now I'm in London it doesn't. So I'm glad, really, grateful to be able to join today and I guess just absorb some of this this wisdom and these challenging thoughts, challenging ideas. So yeah, just I guess I just enjoyed listening, and I think I noticed I've had a bit of a chaotic week or few weeks since I got back to the UK, and so it was difficult at first to sort of really zone in and focus on what you were saying. But I got there, I think, towards the end of your talk, and it yeah, it was very, very helpful as always. I just had one question just on something that you said. I can't remember exactly as you how you phrased it, but it was something about not changing your feelings in the future, but really focusing on your feelings now, right? I can't remember exactly how you phrased it. It was something along those lines, like stop worrying about or working towards changing how you will feel in the future, but focus on what is happening right now. Something along those lines, but you put it a lot better than me. And I was just I was just curious. Is there a role? I mean, you hear a lot of people talking about I don't know, visualization, right? If you want to gain input, like sort of gain a bit of momentum in changing a mind state, which is maybe not that skillful. You know, you hear in other, I've never heard you mention this for sure, but you know, other lots of kind of self-help literature out there will talk about, you know, visualizations or positive thinking, or you know, even self-hypnosis and all of those kinds of things. What do you? I mean, I understand. I think the Buddha's perspective on and I understand as you're explaining it, but you know, is there ever a role for that kind of practice? Something that can kind of give you a shift into a different mind state, which can you know, help you in any way in your practice, or would you say under no circumstances that kind of practice should be, you know, contemplated?
Thank you, Tom. It's such an important question, and it's fundamental. And to answer it, no, those shouldn't be engaging as a Dhamma practitioner. So there's things in the world that people do that are they're helpful to living as a human being.
Sure.
The Buddha described human life that hasn't changed at all as the world is a flame, and it still is. So if we're not going to be Dhamma practitioners, it's probably a good idea to have some other types of support, even though that support is fabricated. You mentioned positive thinking. My mother, I still remember listening to Dr. Carlton Fredericks. I don't know if people remember him, but him and another doctor named Norman Vincent Peale were instrumental in starting or restarting this positive thinking idea. Carlton Fredericks had a radio show, I still remember, on WR radio, 3 o'clock. So my mother listened to it every day. And she became one of the most positive thinking people the world has ever seen. And it ultimately didn't bring her any peace of mind. And maybe it was that kind of experience that conditioned my thinking towards what's wrong with this. And then as I started studying the Dhamma, realizing what the Buddha means by speculative existence, any notion of, even in the, when I was really coming into my own, creative visualization was all the rage. That was like our new nirvana or nibbana. We can just think our way into the whatever existence we want. So-called success writers and spiritual success writers, all through our history, U.S. Anderson, Og Mandino, the bunch of them, connect spirituality and understanding with gaining wealth or gaining position and this type of thing. Human beings are free to do that, and I wouldn't say don't do it or do it, but I would say if you're a Dhamma practitioner, don't do it. Because anytime I have to sit and think of myself towards a better position in my mind, I'm creating a fabricated existence, aren't I? And I'm compelling myself to keep doing the things that maintain that ignorance. And so it might be, I took vows in a tradition that said before you can start your Dhamma practice, you have to engage in 108,000 fold prostrations, meaning from a standing position, you touch your head on the floor and you stand up again. That's one. And I started doing that until I realized that how could this possibly change the way that I think? But because I believed that I did it, when I realized I didn't need to do that, I stopped doing it. And when I finally came to the Buddha's Dhamma and realized that any speculative establishment of self is contrary to the Dhamma.
Yeah.
So to answer your question with a rather long way, long-winded way, as Dhamma practitioners, we do not speculate about anything about ourselves.
Yeah.
If I find that my mind is distracted or troubled, I don't have to create something to resolve that, because I'm just creating another obstacle to myself, aren't I? Another fabrication. As a Dhamma practitioner with a troubled or distracted mind, I know what I need to do.
Yeah.
And keep continuing with the Dhamma. But again, Tom, thank you so much for the question, because it's a fundamental question.
Yeah, and it's always, you're always going to be slightly in conflict with the moment as it is, while you're kind of hoping it to be different in some way, right? Which it connects to positive thinking and stuff. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And once we get caught up in that, our whole life really becomes that aspect of just keeping this ignorance going, however we do it.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too far off into that, but again, we're talking about the key issue of the Dhamma. How do I see myself in relation to the world? If in this moment I gotta stop everything and create something positive for myself, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Even when I succeed, what am I doing? I'm literally stuffing my feelings down. You know, rather than just simply know that what would direct me to think that I should creatively visualize myself out of what is occurring right now is ignorance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let me recognize that, take a breath, and just live with what's occurring, because it will pass. And even the notion that I need to think positively about everything will pass, and it usually does with positive thinkers. So thank you, Tom. I'm glad you joined us.
John, this is Kevin again.
Yes.
It's a really interesting question that Tom asked, and I just want to add this, and correct me if I'm wrong too. It's interesting that this whole metaphor is a visualization. You know, Buddha presents it in order for us, concretely, in some way, to understand what he means by emptiness and about non-self. But during meditation, we wouldn't need to necessarily let me focus on a banana tree, or let me focus on a world of flame. Let me not focus on this. The purpose is to focus on our breath and to let go of feelings and thoughts. So it's really not to have specific visualizations, but these visualizations in his teaching really help us get to that point. Yeah. I hope that's clear.
It's such an important point of clarity. Thank you, Kevin, that I didn't make. Yeah, I mean, that's what we're doing in the Dhamma. And any of the, I mean, we've said this a lot in the last few weeks too, but always here, any adaptation, accommodation, or embellishment to the Buddha's Dhamma obscures the entire Dhamma. It doesn't just make it a little more difficult. And until we let go what is obscuring the Dhamma that we're obfuscating in our own minds, must be recognized and abandoned. But how do we do it? Kevin just said it. We do it within the framework of the Dhamma. Another way of getting to that point is, how does a mind rooted in ignorance know that it's ignorant? It can't, unless it has a framework for recognizing it. Thank you, Kevin. Josh, how are you?
Good morning, John. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, John. It was a wonderful sutta. And I just keep coming back to how distracted I am. You know, the sutta just kind of, again, tells us how the Buddhists just stripped away all this other stuff that we surround ourselves with and think about. I'm thinking about buying a boat, and it's up in Nova Scotia, which I can't go see now, but I spend almost all my waking and hours in the night thinking about that damn boat and how it's going to make me happy, and what I'm going to do to it, and what if somebody else gets it, and so forth and so on. And I know inherently that what I'm doing to myself, that I'm making these fabrications, and I'm going through there, but I'm powerless almost to do it. Even in my jhana, I can last maybe a few seconds on my breath, but then my mind flips back to other things. So I guess what I'm saying is that when I hear you talk, it all makes I don't want to say perfect sense, but I think I kind of get what the Buddha was after, what it means to be a human being, but I feel like I'm just so far away from that I it just seems like a struggle more than anything else. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Yeah, in the beginning, and even at other times, Dhamma practice can seem like a struggle. There's that saying, anything that's worthwhile, What you're describing, though, too, Josh, and you have almost from the beginning of joining us, is you're recognizing where Dhamma practice should be practiced. And you notice that your mind is distracted about the boat in Nova Scotia, and you bring it back. And like I said, 3 seconds later, you're back in Nova Scotia on the boat, and you bring it back. But that's Dhamma practice. The fact that you have to keep doing it doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. The fact that you do it over and over again means that you're doing something right. That's how we extricate ourselves from fabricated views. And when you do get the boat, I'd like to have a ride on it too. So. It's good to see you this morning, Josh. Mary, are you available? Are you online?
Yes, I am. Sorry, I had complications with my phone this morning. It might have been the operator error. I'm not sure. But no, fascinating talk going on right now. And I'm sure, others observed this as well. When Tom was talking, you could see sort of the moment that he understood the difference between being present and being distracted by the future when he was talking to you about visualization. And so I almost want, like if I had been in the room, I probably would have made a gesture just so of support that something happened. He was talking to you about wanting a mind state to shift, and it did. And I don't know when you're first starting whether you know that all the time, but I just wanted to tell Tom I saw it and it happened. So is
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, I just said thank.
Oh,
yeah. No, I think you're right. Good observation.
Yes, that is how it works, and it's those small little increments. So even when John is talking to Josh about that he's actually doing jhana right, you have what I've always found so encouraging about coming back to see John is the slightest encouragement he would give me when I thought I was 90% not doing it, and he would focus on the 10% that you are, because that's when everything starts to open up and become spacious. And then you have those experiences more frequently by maintaining the practice and staying committed to jhana. So, so congratulations. You should have a beautiful day today.
Thank you, Mary. I'm so glad you joined us. The 90% is like foam on the ocean.
Right.
It seems banal, but it's nothing. There's nothing to it. It always yields to constant right effort. Always. Tom, I want to ask you, was that an app description that Mary gave us?
Yeah, no, it is. It's just I think we constantly need reminding I mean, I've been studying the Dharma and I guess slightly different forms for a long time, but it's just incredible how compelling it is to chase after what just might be a quick fix.
Yep.
And yet, I mean, what I'm definitely sort of really eternally grateful for is that I do now know deep down that there is, I know about jhana practice, and I know what's true sort of deep down. And so that's what I appreciate about joining these sessions, is that it reminds me of that. I've actually, John, I've actually recommended your podcast to a few different friends around the world. And I've got some, and they often, they've given me some feedback saying, oh yeah, John he cuts the crap, he gets straight to the point, and and I think they appreciate that, so, and that's what I appreciate about it as well. It's just that chance to, it's just a constant reminder, and it's and I think we're all going through a similar, just what you said, Joshua, really. I felt like that so many times. It doesn't matter how many times. I mean, I've got so many things. Even now, I'm thinking of buying a small house in the UK, and I've got those thoughts of, do I buy here? Do I buy there? All of the worries about it. Well, what about the financial crisis? And da 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 da. And it's just so, these thoughts are just constantly. They always seem so shiny and new and compelling, and like, no, pick me, pick this thought, pick that thought. And so, that's the value of I guess, joining these sessions, and also practicing, just constantly reminding yourself and coming back to it. And it does get a bit easier gradually, I think. Every so often you do look back and be like, oh wait, I am a little bit more awake, a tiny bit more awake than I was a year ago or whatever, every so often. But then of course you also have the opposite feeling sometimes, but yeah, but by and large, it's you just got to keep on the path.
Keep noticing the 10% that Mary pointed out.
Exactly.
Instead of mind rooted in ignorance is attached to that ignorance, it's joined with it. So we look at the 90%. I mean, the mind rooted in ignorance. It's too hard. It can't be done. This is a lot of nonsense. That bald-headed guy in Frenchtown is out of his mind. All these things that maybe that's true.
Yeah.
All of it takes us away from Dhamma practice. And how do we get back? We take a breath and we learn what the Dhamma is. That's, again, this is how the Dhamma is practiced. I say on retreat more often than I say it here, but we are very much like the original sangha from 2,600 years ago, meaning we're focused only on what the Buddha taught and nothing that has developed over all these years. And it seems to work for some of us. Thank you. Ron, good morning.
Just ask a question, John.
Yes,
Sorry,
please.
very quickly. What's that headset that you're wearing?
I get
I'm
bored.
very curious. It's like is it a new birthday present?
It is. I get very bored sometimes teaching class, and for distraction, I play reruns of The Honeymooners on there. I have macular degeneration. It's a low vision aid. I'll put it on just while I'm talking about it. And so there's a camera here and proprietary software. So it brings your face that I can't see anymore and puts it right here like a television screen right in front of my eyes.
Oh,
so,
wow.
I can't see I can't see detail anymore. But macular degeneration is a deterioration of the ability to see detail. So I can see faces. Like I know that Ram is a blob in front of me. He's always been a blob. But now I can see him clearly, and I can see you clearly. So it's a remarkable device. It also allows me to work a little bit more on the computer, so I can. I don't want to get too deep into it, but it allows me to keep writing and keep teaching. So
okay,
I'll keep going for a little while. Thanks for asking. Good morning, Ron.
Good morning. I played a big role in that movie. Wow.
I think I'm going to watch it today. Got to be on Netflix. Yes.
You said something in the beginning on emptiness. This whole sutta is about emptiness, and five clinging aggregates are empty of substance because of their impermanence and because they're fabricated. And then you said the opposite of that is that reality is full. And it satisfies us. It's a satisfying thing to be finally in reality, to be awakened. The dissatisfaction is gone. There is satisfaction there. It's a full existence, and you got to see the fullness of the existence in awakening.
And you don't need anything more.
There's nothing more to need.
Yeah.
You're filled up.
Yeah.
It's done. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you for pointing it out. There's a word that's the counter to dukkha. It's called sukha. Dukkha is D-U-K-K-H-A. The counter is sukha, S-U-K-K-H-A. Dukkha means stress and suffering. Pointing out the difficulties of human life. Sukha it literally means flourishing. And how do we flourish? We flourish because of our involvement in the moment. That's human flourishing. Human flourishing isn't being the emperor of the world or being the president or anything else or having a lot of things. Human flourishing is actually having a human life. It's a big secret. How do I flourish as a human being? Be a human being. How else could it be when you think about it? And that's another realization that Siddhartha Gautama came to. He stopped all grasping and started living his life as a human being. That's what we're doing. That's what the training is about. Those glimpses that we get about really feeling, being well concentrated in the moment are the important aspect of the Dhamma, to recognize that it's working. Thank you. Good morning, David.
Hello, John. You brought up our friend Ananda. And I think Ananda represents everyone. Here he is, for 18 years before becoming the Buddha's attendant, and 25 years with him. And he heard every lesson.
Yep.
And I think some of the most compelling ones are when clearly Ananda is having difficulties. And you mentioned one today. One other than that is when Sariputta passed away. And heard this person who has the greatest mindfulness, recall, giving person, and he lost his mind because his closest friend in the Sangha passed away. And the Buddha gave a lesson on the aggregates. And
Pointing out to Ananda, that's where your suffering resides.
That's where your suffering resides. And he did it again when he was passing. And on the flip side, Ananda thought that the dependent origination was easy. So here, that's us. Those are our difficulties. That we intellectually can understand dependent origination, but we can't make that connection when the rubber meets the road, when your friend dies. And that's where the Buddha continually goes back to that these aggregates are impermanent and they're not self. So I really enjoy seeing Ananda and the lessons when he's showing difficulties that the Buddha just goes back to. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for pointing it out. And the Ananda story is, even though it's a true story, it's also a powerful metaphor, isn't it, for Dhamma practitioners. Ananda was the Buddha's cousin, but attendant for the last 25 years of his life. And yet he didn't awaken by listening to everything the Buddha taught immediately. He had to continue his right effort until a month after the Buddha passed, and then he finally did awaken. It's such a good example of how we practice the Dhamma. Awakening is the goal, it's the culmination. To people who think there's no goal in Buddhism don't understand that. There is a goal, it's awakening. But we engage in right effort, meaning it's a gentle process. We don't grasp after awakening, we just stay focused. In fact, the Eightfold Path allows us to not grasp after it, we just continue to engage in right effort. Thank you, David. Morning, Brett.
Good morning. Good to see you. Good to be here. Great teaching. I could definitely see how attaching to all the thoughts and fabrications and feelings, and you're definitely pulled me out of the present moment and five clinging aggregates. And just how much time is spent. I think being frustrated trying to get back to a clearer state of mind. It's my breath that I need to get back to. And yes, and I guess that would be pretty much, be able to be awakened, be able to be in peace, by not continually chasing a fabrication or an emotion.
So what does it feel like when you stop doing that, when you stop chasing the fabrications? What's the experience, a better way to say it, what's the experience like?
I had when I kind of got it when you were talking about it today, I mean, I know it feels good.
Yeah.
And like, for a split second, you can, and that's been the goal, the ongoing goal. But I think now it's just something, now it needs to happen because it's continuous. Like, I had a situation where I realized I wasn't as good as I thought I was at something. And I'm finally just going, all right, well, here it is again. Let it go.
Yeah.
Because I could sit there and drive myself crazy about something that I don't have to. So.
Yeah. Where you can continue to practice the Dhamma like you just described.
Yeah.
It is just that, Brett. When you recognize that you're caught up in your head, same instructions like given meditation. When you find out you're stuck in the fabrication, in the perception, in the feeling, in the aggregates, you simply recognize it, take a breath, come back in your body. There's nothing else to do, and it's such an important point, because anything else that we do at that point is a fabrication. It's outside the Dhamma. I don't have to visualize myself. I don't have to pray. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to be the perfect Buddhist in order to find salvation, because there's no salvation. All that I need to do is to engage in right effort, take a breath, and see things from right view. The Dhamma. And that's just what you're doing. Thank you. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Tom. Good morning, everybody. I just think a lot of this breaks down to anatta again, okay? And I'll go with that again. Anything that separates the mind from the body, fabrications, distractions, is all anatta. Yes?
Yep.
Okay. So if, again, fully understanding what anatta is, we can understand when we're experiencing something at a point of contact, we can understand, what is the not self. And once it's identified as the not self, and then you can release yourself from it. And such things that would cause distraction of fabrications in the mind. So that's the way the clearing of the mind, or the quality of the mind actually gets better. And obviously, again, it all comes down to the mind and the body united. And when anatta is occurring and you don't recognize it, it's basically the mind being distracted.
Yep.
When your mind is somewhere else, then you can also realize that that's the not self that's occurring.
Well put, Michael, as always. And that when it occurs, we remind ourselves, this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. Whenever I find myself, or we find ourselves in any type of agitated or excited space, that's the response as a Dhamma practitioner. This is not me. When Ed McMahon shows up with Publishers Clearinghouse, do they still do that? When I find out I won $1 million a week for life, as a wise Dhamma practitioner, okay. Doesn't change anything. And I'm being a little facetious. A human being, a wise Dhamma practitioner, who found out they won $1 million a week for life, I've got to be careful of the words. They'd be excited about it, but wouldn't take it personally. How do you not take it personally? You simply don't see yourself as anything different just because you have a big pile of money. And this I noticed, and this wasn't until I developed a Dhamma to a pretty refined level, But I gradually noticed in myself, that I felt a lot better about myself in relation to the world, or my view of myself in relation to the world was always on a much higher level, depending on how much money I had in my wallet. Which, when I finally realized it, I thought, what an awful way to live my life. I didn't want to live that way anymore, so I stopped. And it doesn't mean that I don't think about, I gotta go buy some food next week. I mean, I do the things I need to do, but I'm not obsessed with it. I don't need a big pile of it to feel safe. And that's a remarkable thing. But it's a very subtle aspect, isn't it? But it's also everything to have that kind of distraction. So again, the Buddhist Dhamma brings us in a way of seeing human reality in the way it is. And the Buddha didn't say we don't need anything in the world, because that would have been cruel. He also consistently taught that every human being needs 4 things: food, clothing, shelter, and medicine, which implies that that human being needs to have the means to get those things. Again, it might even seem like a teaching to be dismissed, but when we contrast that to salvation and nothingness and emptiness, that's an incredibly important teaching, isn't it? We need to be out in the world. We need to be getting our food, clothing, shelter, and medicine in some way. And along the way, we can maintain a calm and peaceful mind. That's remarkable, isn't it? Thank you, Michael. Julia, how are you this morning?
Very good. Thank you, Jen. I'm going to take noble silence today, but thank you very much for the teaching.
Well, I'm glad you joined us. Okay, I'm going to let the teaching sit on its own. I think it was a powerful class. We will, and again, the culmination of this class is like every other class. The 5 clinging aggregates are the ongoing personal experience of suffering. The way to extricate ourselves is when we find ourselves agitated or excited, caught up in the moment, to remind ourselves, this is not me, this is not mine, this is not what I am. And we'll finish with metta, as we always do. Give me a moment, please, to call it up. There it is. So take a moment to become mindful of your in-breath and your out-breath. And this is what Buddha's words on metta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing, in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Thank you all for a wonderful class this morning. Peace. Thank you all online. See you all soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you so much, John. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.